Hi, Mayuresh. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for your time. Mayuresh, I've been wanting to talk to you regarding the chemical space because of late, the kind of discussions or kind of reports that we have highlighting that the heightened tariff on China, there could be some opportunities for select chemical players to benefit on. And even today, we are seeing stocks like Aarti Industries and so holding on to decent gains. But Mayuresh, anything incremental or anything substantial to look out for within the chemical space? How are you reading this announcement related to tariff?
Afternoon, Srishti. I think two things. One, I think the China plus one policy is working into earnest on all counts. A lot of managements across the European zone or across the globe, where a lot of the corporates in Europe or rest of the globe are probably looking at. The second aspect, obviously, is with added tariffs coming through on China. I think that does incentivize the industry ex-China. And therefore, I think a lot of our players who have been putting capacities as far as backward integration is to be believed, is something that can work in favor as far as earnings are concerned. The second aspect in terms of diversifying their supply chain as well is something that will positively work out the numbers as well. There are two, three aspects. One, I think the commodity-driven chemical companies are still going to feel the brunt because China is still expected to down significantly. You've seen that probably in terms of both the supply aspects as well as demand coming off. Take the instance of Tata Chemicals as an example, where soda ash demand and pricing were both lower. On the other hand, if you're probably looking at certain specialty players where there are niche capabilities that are involved, something like an India Organics as an example, has done exceptionally well. Obviously, valuations are quite a bit expensive, but the EPS RS rating look fine. So I think the expectation in terms of earnings trajectory and management commentary seem to be in place. What the budget has also announced, Srishti, in terms of batteries, input of a lot of critical materials in terms of ensuring that the production of lithium-ion batteries happens in real estate and good pace as well. Neogen Chemicals, who are expanding the electrolyte and electrolyte salts business. I think this can be one stock that can be kept on radar as well. I think very strong EPS ratings as we see it. And again, I think this entire pack, the entire refrigeration pack, as I would call it, whether it's Navin Fluorine or SRF to a large extent, have largely delivered on numbers. And second half is exceptionally good for these companies as well. So I think the expectation largely in terms of decent volume growth, pricing remaining in favor, and therefore earnings probably remaining steady state in the second half seems to be a case. Again, select agrochemical companies outside the basket might continue doing well. We've seen a good monsoon. We've seen a good Rabi harvest. There are La Nina conditions evolving, which means the coming monsoon will also be equally good if reports are to be believed. And that stands in good stead for a few agrochemical companies as well. So yeah, I think chemical as a space probably looks well poised to deliver in 2025.
Given the fact that post-budget, you have the entire consumption theme abuzz. Everyone's talking about consumption theme. And now they're talking about consumer discretionary versus consumer staples. You're also in the same camp that who is more tilted to a consumer discretionary at this point in time?
Possibly, yes. And I think the results will start flowing in as we head into the first half of the next financial year, because that is when I think the actual effects will start taking place in terms of discretionary spending coming through. But again, I think clearly, if you probably look at the entire consumption basket, which is pretty wide, if you probably look across the value chain, you're probably going to see a few FMCG companies do well. You're going to see some auto companies do well as well, specifically two-wheelers, case in point. M&M is something that we continue holding as a clear disclaimer in our global portfolios as well as four-wheelers are concerned. But generally, I think discretionary stocks should start doing well. Let me also toss in a few QSR players out here. They've really underperformed in terms of their SSS growth over the last few quarters. It's been a drag as consumption was going down significantly, specifically in urban areas and tier 1, tier 2 cities as well. But again, I think with expectations of more spending expected to come through, there is a huge possibility that the underperformance that these QSR players have probably delivered might actually do well. So Jubilant was a stark outperformer compared to the rest of the pack. And relatively, its ratings and rankings as we see it in MarketSmith India have held up so far so good. So I think if there is some turn of events, I think a few of these subsectors within the consumption basket should do that.
coming in on Swiggy versus Zomato, given the fact that these two have come out with the numbers, and with the Swiggy's numbers coming out, actually Zomato's numbers look much better. What's your take on both of these players?
Blinkit has done relatively better compared to what Instamart GOV has been. And therefore, I think if you probably look at the construct again, right, Zomato is expected to open 2,000 odd stores by the end of 26. They are preponing that by almost a year, which means a large part of their cash pool, almost 19,000 crores, is going to get deployed in terms of opening these stores. Now, if you look at the cohorts in terms of the fresh opening of stores that probably happens, with the fresh stores, the contribution margin are negative 8 or 9%. And that might continue with the aggressive mode that they'll be following in this financial year as well, which means that the overall cash flows will be a drag. Obviously, you'd seen some element of improvement that had happened, and a significant one at that, as far as the quick commerce operations were concerned. Food delivery is still decent, if I may call it, but there are a lot of innovations happening even at Swiggy's end as far as food delivery is concerned. And therefore, I think with Swiggy also probably getting into the age to probably open up more stores at an accelerated pace, the cash flow hit is going to be very, very evident on balance sheet. So I think the earlier targets that were probably set out get delayed and deferred by at least a few quarters. And that does not augur well in terms of the bottom line expectations that the street probably puts out. Obviously, I think 27, 28, with all these expansions coming through for both Zomato and Swiggy, might be a different ball game altogether. How their competitor in the unlisted space, Zepto, probably reacts is going to be very, very interesting as well. But they are also on a cash burn model. So somewhere I think the cash flows might be negative for a lot of these stocks, including Zomato, Swiggy. And therefore, I think there will be some element of pain coming through as far as prices are concerned as well. So I think staying away at least from these counters, at least at this juncture.
Staying away for at this point in time. That's the advice coming in from Mayuresh. But with this, Mayuresh would like to thank you for taking the time out and speaking with us.